Little did Paul Hullings and Tim Young know they were about to change someone's life when they walked into this restaurant in Delran, New Jersey. It was 5:30 a.m. and the restaurant was almost empty except for a young waitress who was working the night shift. As he approached discreetly, note in hand, they weren't quite ready for what they wanted to read. Paul and Tim were heading home after one of the most intense days of their lives when they decided to stop for coffee and breakfast. They were in desperate need of the caffeine boost after the night they'd just gotten through. But when they saw the restaurant's neon sign and stopped, little did they know what else this fateful day had in store for them. Paul and Tim were no strangers to trouble. In fact, they faced them every day. What they had seen a few hours ago was written all over their faces. Little did they know that what would happen that morning in the empty cafeteria would shake them to the core. Liz Woodward was also tired from her long shift, but I had to keep going. The erratic work schedules took their toll, but when she remembered what she was working for, she knew she had to smile and swallow it. He looked at the dirty clothes and tired faces of the men who came in and sat down. Her heart skipped a beat as she realized who they were. Liz approached the men to take their orders, and then Paul confirmed her suspicions. "Do me a favor and bring me the biggest cup of coffee you have," he said, rubbing his eyes. The other man nodded. Liz was happy about that. He caught snatches of their conversation as he made the coffee. When she saw the breaking news on TV, she immediately recognized the men's faces. Standing, still holding the coffee pot, she watched the news in fascination. The fire had raged for most of the night, but thankfully was under control. He had checked in at a warehouse in North Brunswick, an hour away. Once she realized what lay ahead, she knew what to do. While waiting for the men to finish their coffee and breakfast, Liz shivered as she carefully wrote her note on the check. Before clearing the plates, he scribbled a picture of an axe on one page and placed it on the table. When Paul picked it up and began to read, tears welled up in his eyes. The two firefighters from the Mount Holly Fire Department sat in silence, stunned by what they had just read. The young waitress was obviously struggling, working weekends, night shifts, and as many shifts as possible in the cafeteria to try to pay off her college loan and make ends meet. But they had no way of knowing how much trouble he was in at home. After battling a raging fire at a North Brunswick warehouse for more than 12 hours, Tim had realized his partner and friend Paul was faltering. When they'd finally got the fire under control, the two men were exhausted. Tim had noticed that Paul hadn't eaten, so he decided to stop by the restaurant. Liz's life was to change radically. After reading their note, Paul and Tim immediately posted it on Facebook, where it got a lot of attention. The fire department post received thousands of likes, comments, and shares. Soon people on the street recognized Liz. She became famous overnight on Facebook. What was on the note? "I invite you to this breakfast. Thank you for all you do, for serving others and for running to the places others run from," Liz wrote. "No matter what your role, you are brave, fearless, and strong. Thank you for being brave every day. Fueled by fire and courage, what a role model you are. Get some rest." "I started crying and felt good. Firefighters are loved, people care about us," Paul told WPVI-TV. But it wasn't until after the post went viral that firefighters learned that Liz was having serious issues of her own. They'd found Liz's GoFundMe account online and knew they had to act. Such a selfless and kind act. "I definitely encourage my friends to take a trip and support the business. And if Liz happens to be your waitress, leave a big tip," Tim wrote in the Facebook post. "Turns out the young lady who gave us a free meal really would be the one who could use some help. We have hired a van twice before so my father could attend his father's funeral and daughter's graduation, as transportation is not covered unless your travel is deemed medically necessary. And it is very important." For a few hours, Liz wrote on her GoFundMe page. It was the first time since her aneurysm that she was able to interact with family and friends she hadn't seen in years. After Liz's father suffered an aneurysm, he was confined to a wheelchair. Liz tried to raise money with her GoFundMe campaign to buy her a wheelchair-accessible van and make her life a little easier. Paul and Tim were touched that their waitress was once again thinking about how she could improve the lives of those around her. "We watched my dad smile and experienced the joy and accomplishment, and watched his memory grow stronger with each person who walked away from his side, incredulous that he could remember exactly who they were and what got her in trouble at the time," Liz continued. "You see, my father is still Steve. Only he is the Steve who survived a brain injury and now uses a wheelchair. He deserves to be Steve and not just a patient or a number on a chart." Awareness of Liz's campaign quickly grew as more and more people saw Paul and Tim's Facebook post about their kind act. Donations were soon pouring in from people around the world. The campaign goal was $17,000, but within a few days the amount donated doubled and then tripled. The amount raised from kind donors exceeded $70,000, more than enough to buy a new hydraulic lift and van for Liz's father. And all because he saw two exhausted firefighters and knew he had to do something to make their day better. He never expected to reap such a great reward. As for Liz, she doesn't think it's a big deal to pay the firefighters $15 breakfast bill. "I know it will be commented on as an extraordinary act. It's a small gesture," Liz told to PPI. He certainly never expected his kind gesture to turn into such a grand gesture from his heroes. After surpassing the campaign's fundraising goal, Liz wrote a heartfelt thank you, expressing her gratitude. "Our family has seen an outpouring of love and support from around the world, and I want to thank you all and beautiful people for making this dream possible. It shows that being kind pays off." Disclaimer: in order to protect the privacy of those depicted, some names, locations, and identifiers have been changed and are the product of the author's imagination. Any resemblance to actual events, locations, or persons living or dead is purely coincidental.